Senator is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, in a few moments here, we're going to have an opportunity to vote to proceed to the nominee for the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. And I've come to the floor this afternoon to speak in support of that nominee, Mr. Bernard McNamee. Mr. McNamee has been nominated to serve on the FERC, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, to complete the remainder of a term that runs through June 30th of 2020. The FERC, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, is an independent agency within the Department of Energy. For a long period of time, nobody really paid much attention to the FERC. I wasn't quite sure what the mission was, but the agency itself is one that has a very key and a very critical role within our country here, in that it regulates the electricity, the hydropower, the natural gas, and the oil pipeline industries. And that basically means that FERC plays a critical role in keeping the lights on and ensuring the deliverability of reliable, safe, and affordable energy to American homes and businesses. So the FERC really is key to so much of what goes on in the world of commerce and our economy here. It is important that we move forward with this vote today. If we confirm Mr. McNamee, FERC will once again have a full complement of 5 commissioners on that agency. And this is something that we have worked hard to restore in this Congress for a period of time. The commission was down to just 3 commissioners. They've got a lot of work to do. The responsibilities are hard, and making sure that they are at full speed must be a priority. It is necessary to enable the agency to address a substantial backlog of energy infrastructure project applications and decisions that are pending on a range of important energy matters. Mr. McNamee, let's talk about the qualifications that he has to serve on the FERC. Over the course of his career, he served in the federal government, including here in the Senate, and in 2 state governments. He's also worked in the energy practice group of a major law firm. As a result of his work and his experience, Mr. McNamee has a deep understanding of energy issues and I think a clear appreciation of FERC's mission. He's made a strong commitment to continue FERC's role as an independent and an impartial regulator, which to me is key. He also knows that it is FERC's duty to keep the lights on and not to carry out policy decisions that are made by other parts of the federal government. His mission within the FERC is pretty well defined. Now, there has been some discussion about Mr. McNamee's prior position implementing policy during this brief tenure that he had at the Department of Energy. This was at a time when the administration was considering whether it could provide economic relief to coal and nuclear power plants. And that has generated its own level of discussion. Some have suggested that Mr. McNamee's work at the department raises questions about his independence, and they've compared him to Ron Binns. Mr. Binns was a former nominee for FERC chairman back in 2013. But I would remind colleagues that there's a difference here. The Senate, when it was considering Mr. Binns back in 2013, in fairness, we didn't actually have him up for consideration on the floor. Mr. Binns voluntarily withdrew his nomination from consideration, and that was based on bipartisan concerns that were raised about his substantive comments and the approach that he took to recruit support for his own nomination. And I'd rather not rehash history today, but I think there is a clear difference between the 2 nominees, and I believe the concerns about Mr. McNamee's independence are largely unfounded. First, the Department of Energy's proposal to FERC on coal and nuclear plants was unanimously rejected by FERC just about a year ago now. The Commission is currently not considering any other administration proposal to assist coal or nuclear power plants. I think it's also wrong to suggest that because someone has experience implementing policy somewhere, that they should be disqualified from any role as an independent regulator. In fact, in this Congress alone, we have already confirmed 2 Senate policy staff members, former staff members, to the Commission. The first one was Neil Chatterjee, an individual that many of us know. He previously served as the Majority Leader's Energy Policy Advisor. And the second one was Mr. Rich Glick, who served as Senior Counsel to Senator Cantwell on the Energy and Natural Resources Committee. And like Chairman Chatterjee and Commissioner Glick, Mr. McNamee's decisions as a commissioner will not be contingent on his implementation of policy decisions in his prior roles. In private meetings and at his nomination hearing last month, Mr. McNamee repeatedly committed to be fair, to be objective, and to be an impartial arbiter in all of the cases that come before the Commission. And he repeated this commitment in response to 2 rounds of questions for the record. I believe that Mr. McNamee understands well that FERC is an independent agency and it must continue to function as such. And I take his commitment to uphold FERC's autonomy and maintain an independent role as a commissioner at face value. But I also expect him to be fuel neutral and not a champion of one resource over another. There's a lot of work, as I mentioned, that must go on at FERC. We need to have all 5 commissioners in place to make sure that it happens. With a full slate of commissioners, FERC will be able to reduce, or certainly work to reduce, its backlog of energy infrastructure projects, including important natural gas pipelines and LNG export terminals. If we're going to remain a prosperous nation with strong growth and affordable energy, we need our interstate pipeline network and our LNG facilities to continue to meet customer demands for our natural gas. This resource serves a variety of critical needs, ranging from keeping us warm to enabling our manufacturing renaissance and increasingly to fuel our electric grid. LNG exports also represent a significant opportunity for states like Alaska, scores of communities, and even looking abroad for America's friends and allies. FERC is also examining other important issues, including its regulations under the Public Utility Regulatory Policies Act, PURPA, the integration of energy storage onto the grid, and the impact of state policies on interstate electricity markets. These issues are incredibly complex, and they have widespread implications for our economy. So again, Mr. President, it is key, it is timely, it is important that we have a full complement on the FERC. Mr. McNamee is well qualified to join the other commissioners in tackling these issues, and I would urge all of my colleagues to support his nomination.